and gentlemen, where are we? Where were we in this story? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Wayne and I'm not an alcoholic. Look, this is one sober to another, and we were talking about how I was changing my wife to drink like me, and she was on her way out the door. If you missed the last video, give it a look. It's the beginning of my story as an alcoholic, and you'll be able to see where all this glides. I'm going to go back in history in just a moment. But first, I just want to say I shot some video yesterday, but unfortunately, it was all lost because the battery on this phone overheated, and I'm not quite certain, where it went. It probably popped into smoke or something. All right, so we are on our way to how my life actually changed to lean towards sobriety and recovery. But before we can do that, I got to go back a little bit and talk about my brothers and sisters for just a moment. They each had their own turnout to having an alcoholic father and a submissive mother, and all the things that went on in a domestic violence household, as well as a dysfunctional household filled with drugs, violence, all kinds of insatiable things that should not happen in a normal childhood. Anyway, the point of that is that each one of my brothers and sisters took away something different from those experiences, and their lives shaped a little bit different than mine did. For me, I became this same alcoholic that my father was, and that I was actually running from when I ended up homeless. And again, if you hadn't seen the video from the first part of this, give it a look, because it's definitely worth the time. Alright, so where am I going with that? So I am going to lead real quick into a story that, if I had already brought this up, I'm sorry, but I tend to forget things, but anyway, so I invited my little brother to live with me when he was on hard times, and I thought I was doing him a favor, and some of you saw a video not too far back to be able to relate to this story. So I invited him to live with me, and he had no idea that he was coming to live with an alcoholic, and his life didn't get any better for coming to live with me, and I thought I was going to safeguard him and give him a place to be able to start thriving and things like that in my mind, because that's what the good part of me would have thought he was doing. But I was completely wrong. I did just the opposite. I probably sank him further than he was in the first place. How does he come into this picture? He comes into this picture because throughout my alcoholic history and throughout my drunkenness and everything else, I've always had a regret of what I could have done better to help him in his life rather than to hurt him more. And that led me into a self-resentment, and that in turn led to trying to throw it down the bottle and see where it lands. And guess what? Hope floats, sorrow doesn't. I don't know. That's just kind of the way I think about it. And you might be able to relate to that. I don't know. I have no idea. So my sisters, they all went their different route and everything else. I had two of them. They went their different routes, and their lives are quite different on the spectrum of things as far as sisters go. One sister is a happy homemaker and everything else, and the other sister is, I'm not going to speak for them, but anyway, so they all turned out a little bit different. My twin brother and I, who should have been the closest, and this also is another regret that thrives throughout my life, and I've come to terms with it. And I've also made amends to him for some of the things that I did while I was drinking, and some of the behavior I had when I was drunk that negatively impacted him and his wife, and possibly his daughter, I don't know. Anyway, so twins are supposed to be inseparable, right? They're supposed to have a bond that is thicker than blood and stronger than rock, and on and on and on and on, and finish each other's sentences and that types of deal. And well, it wasn't for him and I. We were separated, so to speak, well, literally, early on, and he went to live with my aunt and I went to live with my alcoholic father. Awesome. So he had almost a whole different adolescent bringing up than I did. And we never really clicked. We never really found that bond that twins have. And I always had a regret about that. And I always had a resentment towards him for going and having a better life. And I got stuck with the alcoholic dad. Anyway, so that blossomed throughout my drinking career. And that put me into a place where I always thought I was inferior. And that fed back into that childhood, fear of people and all these insecurities that I developed along the way through the environment that I was in. And I thought that was it. I thought I was nothing, and that, I'm never going to get from underneath these footprints, and I'm never going to be able to persevere the way that he has. And I don't know, I felt like crap about it, and I really held the harshest resentment towards him. So I never spoke to him. Once in a while on a birthday and everything else, I'll shoot him a happy birthday message and all that. It's sincere, it's genuine, it truly is. But the part of me that still holds on to he got a better end of the stick, won't let go. So in order for me to have become to the point where I am in my life, in my sobriety and recovery, I had to make amends to him and to admit that, I did hold those resentments, and also to admit that, I did verbal harm to him and his wife when they came to visit me in Germany, and I owed him all that. And so once I did that, I was able to get out of myself a little bit, let my ego go to the side, let the facts go that, he may have had a better start than I did, but I ultimately was the one that steered the ship straight into the freaking iceberg, and I had no one to blame but myself. So that's where I had to be in order to start maturing within my sobriety. All that. By the way, if you watch Veterans with Anxiety, or you've heard of it on my channel or just on YouTube, check him out, throw him some love. He needs some advice and he needs some support as he continues to grow in his recovery from heroin and oxycodone and things like that. He needs some help, a little bit of love, and perhaps you guys could throw him some support. Anyway, I digress. So, I ended up going to rehab. I told you guys about this yesterday, but that footage got lost along, it just, the phone couldn't handle what I was doing, and it just stopped. Anyway, so, I went to rehab. How I got to rehab is a whole story in of itself. And my partner and I, much like I'm doing right now, we drove 4 hours to a hospital in order to admit him for suicidal tendencies and to admit me to go to rehab. It doesn't work like that, folks, and I'm here to tell you, if you try it out, unless it's a complete emergency, they're not going to send you. Anyhow, how did this go? So he called me up and said that he was feeling bad and that he was having these thoughts, and he really wanted to hurt himself because he wasn't happy anymore and his life wasn't going the way he wanted it to. Much like us alcoholics and addicts end up dwelling, he was in that spot, and he was in that spot to the point where he wanted to kill himself. I've been there once or twice or 3 times, and I can relate. So, me being the good dude underneath of the purely drunk alcoholic that I am, said, all right, I'm going to go help my buddy. So I trudged 3.5, 4 miles to his house, and at first I made sure he had beer. That's what a good alcoholic always does. And so I made sure he had beer. And then I went over there and I said, hey man, are you all right? Let's talk a little bit. And he's like, all right man, I got some beers in the fridge. So before you know it, and I'm already like 3 cases in, but before you know it, him and I are drunk as hell, and we come up with this idea to drive to a hospital that's 4 hours away. 4 hours. 2 drunk people and one that's thinking about killing himself that day. Somehow, I can't tell you what happened in between like A to B. We got there, but I can't tell you anything that occurred on the way. And I'm pretty sure he couldn't too if you asked him, which is a horrible and unsafe thing, so don't ever do it. And that's all I'll say about that. Look, at any point in this, when you are, at any point in time, if you're watching these videos and you feel like you have thoughts of suicide or thoughts of harming yourself, or you feel that you need emergency attention right now based off of withdrawals or overdosing or whatever, there are links below. So hit those links, get some immediate help, and if anything, at a minimum, shoot me a DM on Instagram, Twitter, or Reddit, and I will definitely get back to you. And, you know, hopefully you weren't too bored by this story and you want to just hear some of my experiences and how I dealt with them, and perhaps that can help you. Moving on. So we ended up at this hospital, right? Oh my Lord. And I just looked at a message on my phone. And so we ended up at the hospital, and they said, why are you guys here? And so I told them that my buddy was going to kill himself and that I wanted to go to rehab. And they were like, that's awesome, thanks for coming in, but guess what, guys, it doesn't work like that. I was like, what the hell did you mean it doesn't work like that? I'm freaking hammered, and we got here drunk as hell, so if that tells you anything, I need to go to rehab. Now, granted, we didn't tell them we drove a car all the way, because that would be incrimination, folks. Anyway, so they were like, no, look, you gotta get referred, you have to talk to your commander, then you have to get diagnosed with alcohol dependency, and for your buddy, he also has to be diagnosed with behavioral health issues and a true self-harm committal, something like that, to be admitted to the hospital. Now, I think that's garbage, because anyone who says anything about wanting to commit suicide should be taken seriously, and should be taken seriously on the spot. Shouldn't matter if somebody thinks that they're under the influence and this is impacting their decision-making process or whatever. And that's what they told us. They said that's how it went, and they couldn't change it, and better luck next time. So, you know what these fools had me do? They had me call my company commander. They had me tell him exactly why I was at the hospital, and to tell him what I want to do. So I got on the phone with the guy and I said, yep, yes sir, yes sir, about 43 beers, sir, yes sir, absolutely sir, bye-bye. So I hung up the phone and I passed out for the next like 6 or 7 hours. I can't even remember. What was the end result of all this is that I got a bed date. I got admitted to the Army Substance Abuse Program, self-referred, so that means I wasn't going to face any disciplinary action. Now, before I go into the rest of that, I knew for certain that if I did a self-refer, that I would not get in trouble unless I had already committed a crime. I knew that, so I already went in with an excuse so that I wouldn't get in trouble. Keep that in mind, folks, because a lot of us do things just to weasel out of the little bit of bind that we might be in, or just to get us out of the trouble for the moment so that we can move on to the next drink or drug. Now, that might be a general statement, but I guarantee you, if you dig deep down inside, it's pretty true. Alright, so I ended up getting a bed date, and the day that I was supposed to go to rehab, I had drank the 72 hours before that. And I can't tell you how much, and I can't tell you how long, because I'm not sure, and I'm not sure what happened then as well. I blacked out almost every time that I got drunk, folks. A lot of shit happened when I got drunk. Anyway, so my sergeant came to pick me up, and I got into his car, and I can remember he immediately rolled down the window, and he was like, "Whoa, what did you do last night?" I was like, "I didn't drink, Sergeant, I swear, I didn't drink." And he's like, "Yeah, right, whatever." So he took me where I needed to go. He took me back 4 hours to the hospital that I went to about 2.5 weeks before that I just told you about. And I was greeted by technicians who said, "You're going to do this, 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 and this." Now, technicians were lower ranking people than I was at the time in the United States Army. And so I was like, "Look here, special lips." He was a special lips, but I called him special lips because I was drunk. I said, "Look here, special lips. You're going to address me as blah, 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 because that's who I am, and I'm in the United States Army, a profession of arms, and blah, 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 blah." And he was like, "Sergeant, with all due respect, you can shut your mouth, sit down, start filling out this paperwork, because guess what? You are not all that in the United States Army right now. You are a patient at this hospital, and you are undergoing treatment for alcohol addiction. Sit down." I was like, "Dude." So he put me on my spot. He was right. I was no longer this grandiose person and this idea of a leader that I had in my mind. I was simply an alcoholic who was going to get treatment because I was so jacked up that I couldn't function anymore. That's what I was, folks. And after all that, I filled out the paperwork. Not sure what it might have looked like, but I do remember that day they took a photo of me so that I could receive it on my way out. Anyway, I'll dig up that photo and I'll show you guys sometime. And, where was I going? Oh yeah, so it was at that moment, right when I got done that paperwork, we had to take breathalyzers. And let me tell you what, folks, I was the only one that blew a positive reading. And I was the only one who blew a fatal reading. They immediately stopped everything that was going on for me. And they said, "Go see this doctor." And I was like, "What?" They were like, "Get up, go see this doctor." I was like, what's going on? They said, "Don't say another word. Just get up and go to that door that's 3 doors down and go to the right." So I went to the door. I went to the doctor, and the doctor said that I was in danger of going into cardiac arrest and I needed to undergo a medical detox. And I was like, "What the F, man?" I had no idea that I was that messed up still. So I underwent that medical detox, and then I got released back to, I guess you could call it gin pub, but I got released back to the class, so to speak, of people attending this rehabilitation group. And I went in to this group meeting that was going on at the time, and they told me that I had to give what was called a consequence. And the consequence of my actions of coming to rehab, already drunk and at a fatal level, I had to get up and explain why, explain how alcohol contributed to the condition that I was currently in, like the moment that I'm currently in, and what I'm going to do in the future in order to change it. And so I stood up and I told all these random ass people. Now, I never liked talking to random ass people, and if you're an alcoholic or addict like me, that's the last thing you want to do, is tell a whole bunch of people how you jacked up. Anyway, so I had to do it. And when I got done doing it, the counselor that was assigned to me said, "You know what, Wayne?" At first, Wayne threw me off. I was like, "What the fuck is she talking about? I'm Staff Sergeant blah, 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 blah." And she was like, "Look, Wayne, you have to justify to me why I should let you stay here, because I'm seriously thinking about calling your commander, telling them to come get you, telling them how you arrived here, and you will no longer be accepted to this program ever. Because believe it or not, folks, it costs about $15,000 or more to send one person, one service member to rehabilitation for 6 weeks. Now, if you could put that into perspective, about 20 were in the group that I were in, and they have about 12 groups a year. Weird. No, that's incorrect. They have about 10 groups a year. And so, they told me that I was on the brink of being kicked out of there on my very first real day. I was blown away. And I was so blown away, it was at that moment, I literally started to beg to that counselor. I was like, please don't kick me out. This is why I'm here. I'm here because I'm jacked up. And she's like, no. Right now, you are making excuses so that you don't get in trouble. That's what you're doing. And I was like, you're damn right I am. That's exactly what I'm doing. I want to stay here so I don't get in trouble. And she was like, wow, did you just hear yourself? And I said, what? She said, say it again. I said, I want to stay here so I don't get in trouble. And she's like, now that's honesty. Sit down. I'm like, fudge, where am I? Alright, so we are moving on in this story, folks. And I don't tell you any of this with, I don't know, any more perspective than what I have on it. And if you have any comments on these videos or my story as it goes along, drop them below so someone else can get some of that. Because I guarantee you, someone watching right now is drunk or high, or a day sober, or 20 or 20 seconds sober, and they're like, I don't know if I can do this. Look, if I can do it, folks, I promise you, with the work you can too. Look, I'm one sober to another, and I want to give a shout out to what will be John Milborn, Andrew Boomhauer, Dinah Strong, and a bunch of others who have been supporting me this whole time. You guys are amazing, and I appreciate the support you give me. Part 3 of this story is coming up in the very near future, folks. Stay tuned for that. If you like what I've put out here so far, please give a thumbs up so this video stays in circulation. Regardless if I stay on YouTube or not, I want these videos to be helpful for somebody in the very future. And if not today, tomorrow, maybe a year from now. So if you keep liking and if you keep subscribing, I guarantee you these videos will be on here. And if you want more, and you want me to stay here, and you want to keep on rolling this train, let me know. Life is a garden, folks. Dig it. I guarantee you, life will look better through sober glasses. I'm one sober to another. Guess what? I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.